Hi guy, welcome to the 52nd episode of the AMIGArama podcast. I'm your host Lorfarius, and wow, let's just take a moment to pause there. 52 episodes. I have not missed a beat since the show began. We have been pumping these out week by week by week. I'm still amazed that we're so far in and it doesn't feel like we've done anything more than a few episodes. When I first started this, I was hoping to maybe do 15-20 minutes a week. I think this show has grown and expanded naturally over time. It's now a lot longer. Each episodes tend to be more detail packed. I've now got a system down where I'm doing like the history and the research and stuff and how I check things. I mean, when I first started, it was literally me sat there with a few scribbled post-it notes and bits of paper scattered everywhere. Now it's a bit more organised. I'm quite happy to say we have a lot better recording equipment. I've come on so much with this show over the course of a year, and hopefully it's going to be many more years to come. I still can't believe it's been a whole 12 months of this, and here's to the next 12. I'm glad you guys have stuck with me. From all the support on Patreon to people sharing this online and coming along to like the Discord room and Twitter and chatting along and stuff. I've had such a push from people behind the scenes. It's been absolutely amazing. And the great thing is I'm still enjoying this. I'm happy to do it every week. And as long as you guys keep listening, I will keep producing the show. So a big thank you to all of those who have been with us since the beginning. If you've just joined recently, then by all means, please go back and have a look through the catalogue. I mean, we've actually got a catalogue or a library of episodes now. Yeah, there should be something for everyone. Now let's have a look at this week's news. Now, first up is something called AmigaOS 3.1.4. Now I believe this is a new operating system for the modern Amiga and possibly PC operating systems. I might be a bit off there, but reading a bit of the blurb, it says, the new cleaned up polished Amiga operating system for your 68K machine fixes all the small annoyances that have piled up over the years. Originally intended as a bug fix release, it also modernizes any system components previously upgraded in OS 3.9. I actually use 3.9 on my A1200. Contrary to its modest revision number, AmigaOS 3.1.4 is arguably as large an upgrade as OS 3.9 was and surpasses it in stability and robustness. Over 320k of release notes cover almost every aspect of your favourite classic Amiga OS, from boot menu to data types. That's all officially licensed, of course. You can get that from Hyperion-Entertainment.com. But I think they own all like the Amiga licenses and stuff and all the copyright, so they can create these new versions of OS software and push these out. I mean, I've been using 3.9 for a good year now, and it's an amazing operating system. So I'm intrigued to how this will work. Am I going to go and buy a copy to reset up again and go through all that from scratch? Maybe as a side project at some point in future. I suppose I still do want a CD32. Yes, I'm still looking for one of those. I think with one of them speed up cards or expansion slot cards in the back, it might actually be possible to put this on and have a play around with it. Anyway, that's something for the far off future. In other news, a video I was watching recently by Shot97 over on YouTube. He's done a video called Amiga 500 NTSC / PAL Switch, the You're Not Stupid guide. Now this is a 50-minute long video. He goes into great details and compares the games running on different versions like the 60Hz and the 50Hz over in the UK. And he talks about a lot of games that came out in NTSC. Apparently there's a lot more than we think there is possible, because most people say just, oh, don't bother with the American stuff, just stick to the PAL and the UK side. But there are a lot more games than you would expect, and he goes into it in great detail and spells it out and stuff, so it's well worth watching, and I will stick a link into the show notes. And just as a side note, I am still looking for someone to maybe help out with the show theme or do something fancy with the one we've already got. If you've got any Amiga skill whatsoever, then please drop me a line over on Lorfarius@AmigaRama.com, because I would love to talk to you. I'm always eager to expand the show a bit more and put something really special. With it being our 52nd episode, I wanted to do something out of the norm. Usually I just do the big commercial releases, but looking back at the Amiga library, there's such a huge public domain and shareware sort of database of games effectively that's out there, which is just waiting to be dipped into. So I was looking through lots and lots of different games, and Deluxe Galaga has stood out for quite a while because it's one that I've been playing excessively with Dan from Lemon Amiga, and we couple of hours spent on that, just blasting through on 2-player, and the more and more I looked at it and started looking into the history and stuff, came out during the Amiga heyday and was updated for years during and after, right up until around 2015, and I thought it'd be the ideal game to cover for our 52nd episode, so yeah, let's jump in. It was published and developed by Edgar M. Vigdal. He also created Deluxe Pac-Man. Now, I think the idea behind these is he really likes both versions of the games and wanted to tie it to something popular, and he created his own deluxe edition, if you like, with extra features and more enhanced just specifically for the Amiga. Now, this came out in 1993. It was just on one floppy disk as shareware. It was later fully ported to a hard drive version. It can have up to 2 players simultaneously, but only after version 2.4. I think before that it must have been in turns, but I don't have the older versions, I'm afraid. I've been using 2.6, which was the very last effective release available for it. Code and graphics, Edgar M. Vigdal. Music was by Edgar again. Dennis Wyatt was only involved. He was only involved in Deluxe Galaga, and he doesn't seem to have been in this scene or in any sort of like commercial entity. And also Julie Wyatt, and from what I could see, she's involved in doing the voices within the game itself. Now, sadly, Edgar passed away from cancer back in 2015. There's a lot of tributes to him online, and people really liked him and he'd done some fantastic work. This is one of those games that people always refer back to, one of the ones he worked on. That was really special. Despite the name Galaga, you think, oh, this is just going to be a conversion of the arcade game. No, it's not. It was actually inspired by a game called Star Battle on the Commodore VIC-20, which used similar sort of looks and style. And he really hyped that up and then decided later on to attach it to Galaga. And Star Battle was originally based on Galaxian. Now, DevPack was used to code the actual game with graphics drawn in Deluxe Paint. Everybody knows what that is by now. The game runs at an incredible pace, especially the more power-ups further on you get, and optimizing the speed was actually the main goal of it right from the start. He really threw his all into this and getting it running to a super quick degree, and it really does show in the work that he's done. Now, for the music, he used a Korg MS-10 analog synthesizer. Now, he used that for all the sounds within the games. That has come up a few times in the past, so it seems to be the Amiga music weapon of choice. Is that really the right words for it? I'm not sure. The game was eventually ported to PC and Mac as well as iOS, but it was renamed to something called Warblade. Now, you can still pick this up today. It's about a £5. You can pick it up either online or in different stores and places. The PC version was so successful it sold, I believe he said, over 1,000 times more than the original Amiga one, which is quite impressive considering where it came from. The first version of the game, which was version 1, was released on the 20th of October 1993, with version 2.6, which was the final one, coming out on the 9th of March, I believe, of 1995. Reading through some interviews, Edgar said that the main drive of the game right from the off was always about the gameplay. He wanted to make it as pure as possible, and from what we'll see from the actual review, I think he did achieve that and did a pretty good job with it. You can play the game over on Amiga Live, and I would recommend highly that you do. It works very, very well, even with low pings, and I think that's probably because of the level of the tech of the game involved, because it's quite a simplistic sort of arcade game at first glance. Now, with this being an arcade shooter, there isn't much of a story involved, but I have got a bit of the blurb off Edgar's website, and I will read it out. You are in control of a small starfighter, and your mission is to protect the Earth from alien attackers. When you start, your ship has limited supply of bullets and is moving a bit too slowly, but by shooting the aliens you can collect the falling bonuses and get all sorts of weapons, extra speed and a lot of other goodies. The basic concept of the game is just like most other shoot-em-ups of the Galaga-ish persuasion. You pilot your ship back and forth at the bottom of the screen, shooting down waves upon waves of descending aliens. The more waves you clear, the harder they get. There are boss aliens and sub-boss aliens, as well as the standard fodder aliens. And that's pretty much it, but I thought that was as good of an explanation as any to introduce the game as a story. When you first load the game up, you're presented with a simple start title screen. There's not loads of options. You've got things like a quick demo that'll play, high score. It is what you would see within an arcade, so I'm thinking like Space Invaders, the original Galaxia, Galaga, Galaxian, that sort of thing. When you actually kick the game off and fire it up yourself, you're presented with a scrolling star field going from top to bottom. It's not moving too slow, it's not moving too fast. It's just pretty standard, I think, for these sort of shooters. Now, the spaceship that you have, as was said before, it just moves left and right. There's no up, down, or any sort of shield like you would get in, say, Space Invaders, and you get a single button to fire. And pretty much all you do is just bang fire as rapidly as possible and just hope for the best. Along the top of the screen, you've got high score in the middle, player 1 on the left and player 1 on the right, credits, lives, credits used for the in-game store, which you meet later on. I think it appears every few levels. Now, down either side of the screen, depending which player you are, you can see any power-ups that you've collected or letters that you find during your trip. Now, those are the word extra, and if you collect all of them, you get, surprise, surprise, an extra life. I mean, it's basic as you can get from the shooter perspective. Now, as you start, the ship is pretty underpowered. It moves fairly slowly, but as you collect more and more power-ups and items that are dropped from in the middle of the battles when you take out waves and things, the ship itself is really difficult control. It doesn't have much go to it, but every item adds a little bit extra speed, and the more and more you collect, the faster and faster it gets, and it comes to a point where it's so fast that you can't ideally control the ship at all. It just becomes absolutely chaotic. So it does make you think about what you pick up and what you collect, because you don't want to get to a stage where you're moving fairly quickly back and forth and then it soups you right up to the top level and you go past that point of no return. So it really does make you pause to look at the different items. The most important thing to mention for this, as should be with any shoot 'em up, is the controls, and I'm quite happy to say that these are spot on. It never feels like you're in any situation where you are not in control. Even when there's a big hail of bullets coming, you always feel like you can get out of a situation. You've got full-on accuracy. They respond well. It's very quick to the button presses. I had no problem with them whatsoever, and I didn't see any sort of delay. It didn't matter which version I was playing on, which Amiga, they were all the same. As I hinted at before, there is a huge, and I mean absolutely huge array of items. It would be impossible for me to list them from in the episodes. Some of the simple things are just like credits, double and triple shots, fireballs, gem bombs, a warp gate, I think, which takes you to a shop, extra bullets, even a drunk mode which completely reverses the controls. The extra bullets is a clever one because, like, obviously you think the more and more bullets you get, the more powerful I can be, but at the same time, if you get things like double shot and then you get the triple shot, which has a wider spread, you might think, oh, I'll be souped up and powerful. But there's a few situations when you're facing off against enemies that the triple shot is more of a problem than it should be. So often, a lot of the time, is you need to really think, is what's coming up ahead? I know what this level is like. Should I go with a double shot? And it becomes very dependent on how you play the game and the situation that you're about to face, because this is one game you will be replaying over and over again. So you will get into a situation where you need to learn it and you want to learn it. There are 75 levels in total, and that also includes several mini games which are dotted throughout. those consist of I don't know how you call it, it's like an asteroid storm. Basically, you're flying straight up and these huge rocks are spinning through space and coming in at different angles and things, and you can shoot some of them and not others, and you just got to be careful with everything that's going on, and it can be very frantic. During these sections, you do get like a little bar down the side of the screen, which shows the distance towards the end of the level. A lot of the time, you're picking up bonuses as well during this, because it's an ideal time to do it because there's no enemies. There's not many enemies dotted around because you're in the middle of this storm. So it just becomes a matter of survival and see what you can get and how many points you can rack up. The other mini game is a sort of memorization game called the Memory Station, and what it does is present you a huge square grid, and under each square is a different icon or symbol. They usually match the items that you can collect within the game. Get 2 of them, they both disappear. You have a time limit to do this, and you've got to be as quick as possible. The more you get, the more things and prizes you get at the end. It's nice and simple, and it provides a great break to the game because the game itself is pretty frantic and it's really involved with lots going on. And there are occasions where you're just glad to take a short, brief breather just to push through this section, and then when you jump back into it, you slowly build your way up through the level. So they're all quite cleverly placed, and they don't happen too often that they become annoying, and when you do see them, they're enjoyable enough that they're not too much of a problem. The game is stuffed to the gills with enemies. They are everywhere. They have all sorts of patterns, spinning attacks. Some of them come flying down in columns, others come in waves, others will fly up and around and then split off in a wave and then come to attack you, swoop off the bottom of the screen and then come up and then restart at the top. You have to be on your toes constantly. Some of the enemies are absolutely huge, others are quite small. They're almost like wasps. That just reminds me, actually, one power up you can get is you can control up to 2 enemies, and basically what that does is that sticks them on your left and right of the ship and they fire alongside you, and it's almost like having a set of cannons effectively, and it's quite entertaining. It really does add an extra exciting element to the standard shoot 'em up gameplay. The graphics themselves are perfect 80s arcade shooter. Now, what I mean by that is like bright and colourful. They are very well drawn with loads of details. Loads of the enemies are like blinking, flashing with different colours. And one of the particular ones, I don't know what it's called, but it spins in a circle and it's like these loose little triangular bits which then goes off like into an explosion like a star. And it just sounds very bizarre, that, doesn't it? I had a lot of fun with these enemies. It seemed that every section you explored through the game, there was something new, and it really has gone overboard with the amount of baddies in this that you have to tackle. And a lot of these have similar sort of patterns, and you will get used to them, but when there's lots of these coming in at different points, and there's no slow down, there's lots and lots of bullets being slung down at you at the same time, it really can be absolutely crazy. And some of the close neck situations you get into, I've never really experienced this on this sort of a shooter, especially from this time period, unless that's just me, of course. I know later on I'm not a shooter person really, but when you start getting in later consoles like the Sega Saturn with things like, is it Raiden or Raiden, whatever, that's sort of a shooter. In what is it, Xenosaga? No, I'm way off there. It begins with an X anyway. But these real bullet hells where you can do things like change shields to soak up bullets and things, it always seemed to me like a much later thing. But no, Deluxe Galaga was doing similar sort of things from the beginning. The game is highly addictive, and usually when I play games like this, I'll dip in and out. I'll do it over a few days because, I'm trying to come up with the episode for it. I first tried this with Dan from Lemon Amiga, and a big thank you again to Dan because I'm absolutely addicted to this. I've been playing it on and off. We got some footage together. It was absolutely fantastic to play. But as I was playing it constantly, I was getting better and better. I was learning the way the levels played and the way the ships react and the other ones, and it all comes together in the different weapon types, and the fact that you can visit shops and choose whether or not to get certain gear is much easier for us because we were talking online and stuff. There's a real learning curve there because you can just go in and blow your money on things like extra lives or a little bit of weapons and, increase to double shot and triple shot, which a lot of people would just do. You really need to have a level of thinking involved there, and it's highly addictive. Now, it has that whole just one more go feel to it, because even when you've lost and died, you just keep wanting to come back and have another crack at it. And I've never seen a game like this on the Amiga that has this to this degree. It really does draw you in and grab onto you and doesn't let go. Oof, I'm getting a bit carried away there, and we're not even at the end of the show. As you can probably tell, I quite like this game. Now, the sound effects, see, there are other things we have to talk about. They were alright, I didn't have any problems with them. This is pretty much a typical shoot 'em up, so there's nothing amazing in there. There's like explosions and dinging and dongings and what you get on like the likes of Space Invaders and all that 80s stuff. It's adequate, it's perfectly fine. There is some voice work included in there, stuff like when you're at the shop and a few messages dotted throughout. It's nothing amazing, it does the job perfectly well. It sounds pretty good actually, to be honest, and I don't think that type of an arcade game was really doing that sort of a thing at the time, especially for this simplistic sort of style. I think that was really left behind for the much bigger ones. Again, I don't know anything about arcade shooters, I might be completely wrong, so please don't get insulted if I'm off about that there. There is no music during the gameplay. I don't think you really need that, to be honest, because it's very fast paced and frantic, and with all the sound effects going on, your attention's drawn to the screen. But the main title screen does have an absolutely fantastic sound. It's very thumping, it's fast, it's quick, it suits the game perfectly. It sounds like you would get on an original arcade. It's one of them that would draw you in across the other machines and you think, that sounds great. It really is that rapid and fantastic, and he did some excellent work. And any arcade fan will feel right at home with this. We do, of course, have to try and look at the issues with the games, as I always try and do. This is pretty much an arcade shooter. It's as basic as they come. There's nothing too amazing, you know. You've not got full worlds to explore. It's very addictive fun, but I have to try and find some problems. I really am struggling, to be honest. I was looking at this for ages, and I personally didn't find anything that really annoyed me or stood out. I did find, there we go, I've already found something. It did feel a bit slow when you're first starting off. If you die later on in the game, you know, you've built your ship up, it's really fantastically rapid and fast, and you know, it really does draw you in the further on you get. But if you run out of lives and you've got to restart the game, it can be a bit annoying because you've got to travel through loads and loads of levels to get back up there and build your ship up slowly. After a while, it all becomes part of the game. You can find things like warps, I think, and level skips and stuff like that. So it's not just getting abandoned completely. There's always a way to work your way back up there. I'm not very good at shooters, and at times when I've spent ages surviving and I've built my ship up and then you die, lose a life, and then you can lose all your power-ups. That's quite annoying from time to time, but again, that's typical for shooters. It doesn't really, shouldn't surprise you. It's not really a bad point. It's just one of them grievances. I'm trying to come up with problems, guys. It's the best I can do. The later levels are really difficult. That's pretty much typical for any game, I suppose. But it can get to a point with the whole bullet hell where you're stuck in situations. It can be incredibly tough, and you've really got to have that level of skill to avoid things. The great thing about it was, again, this is supposed to be a complaint, but if you practice, you will get much better at it. And I even found when the first time I was playing it, and each time I got back to it, I was learning things. The game seemed to react more to what I was doing. I was getting used to it, and I just got better, and I felt like I was improving. And as you can probably see from the game footage, if you go and watch that, as always, I will post it on the website. By the end of the video that we done, my character was just flying all over the show. I was getting used to the levels. We've been playing it for quite a while. The fact is, you will get to that same degree. You might be a bit annoyed at first, but it's one of them things where if you put the perseverance in, you keep having another go, you will get better, and it's well worth the reward you get at the end. There was no commercial release for this, so the magazines only really looked at it as a sort of public domain shareware title. A few of them did review it. The one gave it 4 out of 5, and I was surprised by that actually, because that's almost too low. Amiga Power gave it 4.5 out of 5. Not sure what that's all about. Amiga Computing, and this is the good one, they gave it 100%. Now, That's just outstanding. I've never seen a game get anything like that, and they were just singing its praises and absolutely loved it. I got the impressions from the other one, marking it low I suppose, like 4 out of 5 is not a low score, but there's no faults with this. There's no major issues, and there's nothing to pick this down from a high-end type of game. It's, it's very addictive. There's a lot going on with it, and it really does take a level of skill. And I just wonder if the person maybe doing the reviews for the public domain games just wasn't used to that sort of a game, or, reviews are very opinionated pieces because it's just off the back of one person's. Maybe it was just a luck of the draw, but I didn't feel that some of them scores were too deserved. It should have been a lot higher. 5 out of 5s all the way. I will say from the off, this is the most fun, addictive shooter that I've ever played on the Amiga. Now, when we tackled Banshee, that was a great game, and people always refer back to that one. And it looks fantastic, and it's got all its great stuff about it. That has its problems as well. I don't think that's anywhere near as good as this. I was not as impressed with that as I am with this game. These two are on a wholly different level. The amount of pure gameplay that you've got with this, it really is that addictive. It really does push you on. There's no boring sections, and yeah, I did say before it's a bit slow at the beginning, but you do get used to that, and every game has to have a lead in anyway, and it doesn't take long to skip on by that or to work your way through. Now, on occasions it is pure bullet hell at times. They are flying at you from all over the show. I mean, in all sorts of directions. You really do have to keep your eye on the different ships and all these different bullets. And you really will scrape by some of these situations by very, very scary degrees. That's what's so fun about it. There are an insane number of power-ups. It would take me ages to go into them. This is crazy. I didn't even mention the shields. They've just come back to me now. But that's something, shields or armor, however you call it. But the fact is, there's lots of different options and multipliers and coins and things you can buy in the shops and different effects. There's also negative effects. You can pick up a skull, which will, and again, is the skull the one that kills you, or is it the one that downgrades your weapons? There's something else I've not mentioned. A power down maybe, that loses you the ability of the weapon that you're using and takes it to a lower scale. Or the speed as well, that can be reduced. Again, when it's very frantic, there's a lot going on, you've got these colourful icons in there. It's not always easy to pick them out, but after a while you get used to the way the game looks and how the aliens are and how the bullets react to power-ups. They don't skirt around them or anything, but they are very different sized objects, and it's almost as if your brain gets used to it and your eyeballs can pick them out, and you will be skirting all over the shop to scoot them up. I would highly recommend that you go and play this in the 2-player mode on Amiga Live. I had all sorts of fun with that. It takes the game to a whole new level. The single player is fun, got a lot going on for it. You will learn the game, but when there's a second person involved and you're both going through these massive situations and flying through asteroid fields, and you're not taking turns because it's like at the same time you're on the same screen and you can plan battles and boss battles. I didn't really go into it, but there's lots and lots of different bosses dotted throughout these levels, and there are usually these huge massive things firing like arrays of rockets and bullets, and then there's little sub bosses which are much smaller. There's lots of things like a laser shield, but I don't know what to call them, miniature things like these mother ships and stuff like that. There's just lots and lots of different enemy types. It's just like it's like Space Invaders on steroids. I don't know how else to describe it. It's absolutely crazy the amount of fun and content that he's managed to pack into this game. And it's really sad that Edgar has passed away, but my god, what a legacy to leave behind. I mean, this is one of the fondest shooters, I believe, on the Amiga. There's always a lot of people I talk to and they just sing this game's praises. It is right up there. I think it pretty much is the best shooter on the Amiga. Now, I've played this and Banshee, and I will say this comes out by far. It's a very simple arcade shooter. Well, it starts off like that, but the more you get into it, the deeper the game becomes, and it just becomes insane by the end with a huge amount of speed and the reaction time and the way you've got to deal with things and the different weapons and everything going on. It's blowing my brain now trying to remember all these parts. It's like fireworks going off in my mind. I just found it insane. I need to go and lie down for a bit and calm down. I'm remembering parts towards the end of the game. Now, what can I say? I think I'll be contacting Dan from Lemon Amiga for another go on this soon, because I just had an amazing time with it, and it's probably one of my most highly recommended shooters. You know, this deserves a place in everyone's collection. Even if you've got an emulator, you deserve it. You need to go and get a copy of this. Go and download it. I don't care. Get it from wherever. I think it's on AmniNet as the full version, so there's no excuse. Go and play it. You will have an awesome time. It's time to wrap up this week's show. If you've any comments about what you've just heard, you can pop along to AmigaRama.com, drop me an email with any questions at Lorfarius@AmigaRama.com, or you can pop along to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/AmigaRama. I've got that noted down now in script form. What more can I say? I would like to take a quick moment just to thank our Patreon supporters. The list has actually grown this week with Glenn Milford now getting involved. He runs a YouTube channel called Casual Retro Gamer, which has covered a series of Amiga videos recently, but he does other retro stuff as well, so quite interesting content there, well worth going having a look. But of course, let's thank our other Patreon supporters. They are Adam Bradley, Figgy CTZ, Graham Vebke, Jason Warnes, O'Brien's Retro and Vintage, Retro Ravi, Sneff and Treble. Until next time, guys.